There we are.
Okay.
I don't have a question about because I wasn't on yesterday, but uh, what is it about bringing a dead body in the church? I heard this pastor said that he would never let a funeral have a funeral in his church. It would have to be at a funeral home because that's the place where the body should be brought and not inside of a church.
He's basing that on a Jewish custom and Islamic custom. Only life in a mosque, only life in a synagogue. Bringing dead bodies into a place of worship, it grew out of Catholicism. And that shows you how many rituals that connects us to Catholicism. There are a lot of them. The idea of sitting with bodies, that is an African tradition that the Hebrews did. And matter of fact, before them, bodies were brought home because they felt like the person had not completely exited the body, and no one should be left alone. Not only left alone to die, but also they should be accompanied until they are buried. Does that help you, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Are there any other questions? Barbara Jean,
Sir?
you are wrapping up, right?
I thought I wrapped up already.
Almost. You didn't put the bow on it.
Well, what's the question so we can put a bow on it?
A synopsis, I guess, of what we talked about.
Wow.
That may relate to some questions and people who had them and maybe possibly forgotten them because they didn't write them down.
Okay, let me see if I can't do that in a nutshell, which means I'm going to leave some stuff out because it's a lot of stuff that we cover. We talked about the journeys of Abraham and Sarah, and Ron covered part of it in his studies earlier about the fact that Abraham went all over Canaan, and it looks like what happened was that he came back and repeated himself, and then the Israelites subsequently went back to Canaan as well. But anyway, we talked about Abraham and Sarah and Abraham's other wife, Hagar, who is also thought to be known as Keturah. She was Egyptian. Sarah was known as his primary wife, and it is said that the Shekinah dwelled at her door in the form of a cloud, and that she had a light, a lamp or lantern in her tent that never went out. It finally went out when she transitioned, but when her son Isaac married Rebecca, the lamp came back on. We talked about initially Abraham and Sarah having Isaac after Ishmael had been born. Ishmael was Abraham's son by Hagar / Keturah. And Ishmael was 14 actually, when her son Isaac was born. We talked about the fact that Hagar Keturah, Hagar/Keturah ran away from Abraham's homestead, tent stead, or whatever you call it, twice. And each time, as she was told to go back, first time she was told that she would have a son before she got pregnant with Ishmael, that she would have a son and that she would call him God Hears. And then the second time was when, after Sarah had had Isaac, and he was about, he was past weaning, past the age of weaning. And Ishmael was playing with him or mocking him, or you know how children will do. He was doing something. And Sarah decided that she would take a stand, and she said to Abraham, that woman and her son have to go. He will not share the inheritance with my son Isaac. And of course, Abraham was hesitant to do that. And let me remind everybody that this is a story, and the story is allegorical in that it has this essence in spiritual principles. Pastor's going to help me pull those spiritual aspects together. In any event, Abraham sent Keturah and Ishmael away into the desert, a very dry place. Desert often speaks to, in terms of spirituality, in terms of the state of consciousness, a state of consciousness where there is that's lacking in spirituality. Keturah and Ishmael. Yes, sir.
This is Charles. I have a question before you get too far.
Okay.
What's the reason? What Canaan mean? Canaan. What up? The country.
Canaan.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see if I can remember. Does anybody remember that right offhand? I have to find my notes.
Because he kept going back to Canaan, and Canaan got to be representing something.
Yeah, you're right, Charles. I just have to find it. If anybody else comes across it before I do, please feel free to chime in. We'll get it for you, Charles.
Okay.
In any event, the messenger of the Most High, of God, told her that her son would be the leader of many nations. And when Abraham sent him away, Isaac then became the prominent one in the family. And we talked about parallelisms and the parallel kinds of paths that both of these took. Isaac was the son of Abraham's first wife, Sarah. Isaac was the second son born to Abraham of Abraham's first wife, Sarah. Ishmael was the first son born to Abraham of Sarah's handmaiden, second wife. Go.
Excuse me, Barbara.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Pastor. I'm sorry. What I see with that is it's talking about to be brought down low, with a heavy burden, or to carry a burden or to carry a load. Was that the definition that?
Oh, no, you're talking about the definition of Canaan.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, Ron, that's the same thing I had, that to be humbled, a burden.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that once, didn't we?
This is Vermel. So when Sarah went out into Canaan, when she was sent away, can we say that was her will?
Hagar was sent away, not Sarah.
Hagar. I'm sorry, Hagar. Was that her wilderness? Could we say that was a moment of?
Literally, figuratively, and metaphorically, yes.
Okay.
It was a dry place. She had to survive. She had to ensure that her son survived. And from a spiritual perspective, I'm wondering, even the feeling of betrayal. But remember, she is one of the few women that the messenger of God spoke to directly. And so when she was told that her son would have many people, many nations come from him, and she was given water, the well was found. I don't believe that she was as much in her wilderness after that encouragement and after being saved. It is also said that Keturah, from that point on, never had relations with another man, that she never remarried, and Hagar/Keturah's name means tied to or incense, and her life was such that it was like incense. It was pure. And the tied to meant that she never really left, quote unquote, Abraham behind in terms of her consciousness. And she had been in the household with Abraham and Sarah for years. Remember, Ishmael was 14 before even Sarah's son was born. And so she had to have understood some of the things that Abraham espoused. And it is said that she saw the messengers that came to Abraham's, messengers meaning angels that came to Abraham's tent. So it wasn't as if she believed only in Egyptian gods. I believe she had adopted, if you will, and followed, if you will, the God of Abraham.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Seems like we bumping here. Go ahead, man.
Well, I'm listening to Barbara talking, and she's really started me on another journey, and I don't know where I'm going with it. Because what I see when I think of Abraham, this journey across this wilderness and all the places he went, and it's talking about the journey of a man who's in search of truth, and so all those benchmarks and water wells and encounters with people, they all mean something, and they all kind of mark the territory, or in our own minds, on our own inward journey that we will also trek. So in looking at it from that perspective, you mentioned putting Hagar and Ishmael out and into a dry place. So that just got me to thinking a little bit, I guess. So it was God's intention then that she find her own life, because I'm looking at this wilderness as a place that there's no spark there. There's no life. There's there's nothing there to grasp onto. So if her crying out, she's no longer under this umbrella. So her crying out because of the boy, as the scripture says, God recognizes her. Do you see where I'm trying to go with this, or it just kind of stood out to me when you said that.
Yeah, and the God hears, and the God hears, Ron, part relates to, I think, three things. God heard Abraham when Abraham says, "Oh, that my son Isaac, would be before you." When God told him that he would have a son himself, he said, "Oh, that my son Isaac." He wanted Isaac to be seen in the line of his. Ishmael. Oh, that my son Ishmael would be before you. He wanted Ishmael to be seen in his patronage as well, in his line, in his lineage. And then that's when he cried out. And then he heard Hagar cry out. And at the same time, he also heard the child crying out. And so everything that was foretold to Hagar when she first ran away was that you will name him Ishmael, God hears. And so the God hears part of that, I believe, is part of her story. Part of, from that point on, could explain why she did not marry again, why she was chased, why she, and it said eventually ended up, after Sarah died, marrying Abraham, because she, after going through that wilderness, that dry spell, that, oh Father, why, where am I? What is this all about? Why am I out here alone? My son, I can't watch my son die. And after she was given the message and was shown the water, the well, it is said that they made their home near that well, and that they were able to make a living because caravans had come in that direction, and that water was always there for herds and things like that.
Barbara.
Yeah. Ron,
Ron,
let me get Evelyn and then I'll come back to you. Okay. All right,
Go ahead,
Well,
I'm sorry.
there are times when I feel just like Hagar, because I cry out a lot about certain things. And I have not heard God yet. And I've been crying out for a long time. And again, I don't know what else to say.
Have you really not heard God?
Well, I know God always speaks, but sometimes I do believe I'm missing it. I'm missing what it's saying, and I'm just being honest with you. Deborah, I cry. I may not cry out loud, but in my soul, it cries because.
May I address that?
Yes, sir.
It's not that you don't hear him. It could very well be the things that you're crying out for, especially when you cry out for other people. It's not that it's not being responded to. It may very well be that it's happening, but out of your sight. And as far as you are concerned personally, what are the things that you cry out for are not even necessary for you to cry out for them. And the reason I say that is because from my experience in talking with you, you are diligently seeking the kingdom and righteousness, and therefore all of these things will be added unto you. Right now, what we when you say that, there are times when things are being orchestrated by the Creator on your behalf, and it doesn't happen immediately. It takes time for it to develop. The ministry that I entered had been, the pull had been on me since I was 19 years old and younger. But I did not deal with it. However, when I did, I never knew what I was getting into, because my expectation was to go into ministry as I had been urged to do by the Creator and travel the same journey that everyone else traveled. However, I had an extremely serendipitous experience. I was being prepared the day I sat down in that floor in Christian Supply Store and found that concordance and sat there all day long looking up words. I was being prepared for where we are today. And I use me because I understand my journey does not do anyone else. So what I'm saying is this: the orchestration of it is in progress. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be responded to. It may very well mean that it's not time for you to be responded to. And I can go down the list. I remember when we wanted to remodel the house, and I told Phoebe I was going to talk to my cousin about it, and she said, I don't think we should do it now. And I said, okay. We didn't do it. A few years later, I go back to her, and I say, I think we're going to ready to do this remodel. And she said, yeah, we are. Okay. We did it. After it was completed, a year after it was completed, my cousin died. So was my desires being orchestrated, and the agreement was we shall do it at that time, and it was it preparation to get it done before he transitioned? So, excuse me, I know that I'm not the only one who have had these types of experiences. And since I have said these things to you guys, I guarantee you that the overwhelming majority of you on this phone has had the same types of experiences, if not the exact experience. Am I making sense to you, Evan?
Yes, sir, you are. And Pastor, I hear you, I know, but I was just saying.
I know. I do understand. I do understand. I really do. Let me ask a question, and I'm not asking for a response to this question. I want you to respond to yourself. If you keep crying out for the same thing, and I'm not just talking about you, Elmer, because you're not the only one. If you keep crying out for the same thing, is that an implication that you don't trust it's going to happen?
Is that similar to going back to the altar over and over, asking for the same thing over and over?
Absolutely. So if you take that and make application of it to your children, you told your child that you're going to get the shoes that they want, but you can't get them at that point. You don't tell them when you go get them because you don't know. Your child comes to you raising that question, when we go get the shoes? to a place where you finally say, listen, if you don't stop asking me, you're not going to get the shoes. That type of response comes because the child loves you. You never disappoint them. However, they don't see the shoes at the time they want them, and yet they keep asking you for them. It's not that they don't necessarily trust you. It's not that you don't necessarily trust that you're going to get them, but you get tired of hearing it. And maybe the Creator is no different in that you ask the same thing, and it's just not time yet. Because I have done things and pushed it and suffered the consequences. We do have the right to do that, and that is one of the reasons I gave up my free will. So I'm hoping that these examples are helping you and others by way of strengthening you, so that you won't be functioning based on what you hope for. You will live based upon what you know the truth to be. You know that the Father has promised, that Avun has promised to be with you, to provide everything that you need, and has said that if I take care of the birds, why wouldn't I take care of you? You made in my image. So I don't want us, especially at this point, to begin to lose hope, or to, and sometimes when we do it through the back door. We don't say we're losing hope. We just act it out, or we say things that leads us to that place of hope slipping away. Know that you are heard, and everything for your benefit is going to be given. Is one thing that I have learned, and that is the promises that are made to us by Avun, by the universe. Those promises are always fulfilled, but they are fulfilled when they will best serve us. And I hope that helps. God, I hope that helps.
Pastor, it did, and I'm quite sure others benefited from it as well. And like today, before I left work, I spoke with this gentleman who I licensed today, and well, not today, but he's been licensed a while, but he told me he had to go bury his daughter. He's here in South Carolina. He had to go bury his daughter in Arizona due to the COVID. And look, like that just took me further down in Canaan, as we were just saying, talking about. It just tore me up, and then I started thinking about stuff, so it was a lot.
That's not God not hearing you. That's you being God. That's empathy. That's not sympathy. That's empathy. You felt his pain. And in feeling his pain, the energy that you gave off was comforting. We are active spiritually most of the time without knowing it. Can you see that, my dear?
Yes, sir. I do. And I hear you, and I hear you loud and clear, but it just hurts,
Of course it does. Of course it does. Everyone needs someone to help them bear the burden of their pains. And it doesn't have to be someone you know or close to you. It could be just like you were today on the telephone. Not really, wouldn't even know the person if you were to see them. But you did what you did because your divinity surfaced when it was needed the most. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does. It does.
The piece that's missing for you, Evelyn, is you understand the empathy that you had. What you don't see is the impact that you had on the gentleman you spoke with. You don't know the impact that you had. You see what I'm saying? And so it could have been transformative for him just to have someone who could empathize with him. So we don't have all the parts and the pieces of the impact that we have on circumstances and on people, but we trust that God does because we are connected with him. There is no way the man could have gone away not touched in some way because of who you are.
And he could have called someone else.
And you know, he told me, he said, Miss Ford, I called you last week, but I couldn't get you. And I'm like, wow, I'm sorry. I think I was off or something like that. But, yeah.
Stop right there. Miss Ford, I called you last week, but I couldn't get you. It wasn't time. The Creator was orchestrating what happened today when you talked with him. If he had gotten you last week, would he be on his way to Arizona to bury his daughter? You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I hear you, Pastor.
When you were needed, and if you can show up for him when it's needed because you are being guided by the divinity that you were created with, then you take that same circumstance and apply it to you, and it does not matter what it involves. A wound is always there for us, and it's always moving pieces like on a chessboard to make sure that we don't get checkmate, that we continue in this life with the ups and downs. And when you said that you was like Canaan, when Ron gave the understanding of Canaan, the first thing came out of his mouth was low places, but or being down low under a burden. You carried the burden for him. Your tears were for him. Does that make sense? Or shall I say, what are your thoughts about that?
I have no
I would go ahead, Ellen. You have no comment?
No, I don't have any comment. No.
I would say that you have given us the perfect example of Ishmael and his name, God hears.
I was going there too.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you because I got excited.
No,
go ahead.
No, because you were next anyway. So go ahead.
Well, where I was going with it, I don't want us to overlook what Hagar does here, because the whole thing, you ended yesterday talking about the Shekinah and feminine energy. Don't overlook the feminine energy in Evelyn's example and in what Hagar does. Hagar could have let her masculinity shine, or dull the moment, rather, not shine, dull the moment. She could have been harsh. She could have been angry that she was sent out, and no life would have taken place. But because she was submissive and bowed down to God and asked and cries out, look at how many people are saved that come by that well. Look at the nation that is born from Ishmael, the nations. So what Evelyn did by your feminine energy by grasping hold to what this man was saying and feeling his pain, you have no idea what this did to him, and you have no idea of what's going to open up for him and for you because of this. This is real. This is very much real. So what you said just gave a perfect example, and I back up all the way to what Pastor said. A lot of times, and I'm one of them, with my crying out, it ain't always visual. We want to see what we want to see, but it ain't always visual. But I hope you hear from him and he tell you how comforting it is within the next several days or weeks or whatever. You'll hear from him again.
Thank you.
Everything that Barbara and Ron have taught in relationship to Abraham speaks to the different concepts or the different thought patterns that we have. And when we think about with Hagar, that's part of this Abraham's personality as opposed to these being individual people. This is a part of masculine personality. What am I saying? The masculine personality, the masculine traits, or the masculine attributes has femininity in it, and it is a very important part of masculinity and must be adhered to, listened to. You look at Abraham was going. This man was going from enlightenment with the light as Sarah's tent, and to a struggle in terms of Hagar, but with a struggle that resulted in nations being formed and people being relieved when they were on their journey by virtue of having water available. So I do see this as something that all of us deal with. And if we look closely at Sarah, and matter of fact, all the feminine energy that's represented by the different names that we have been talking about, what we see is light. As Ron said, Hagar could have quit, but she did not let the light go out. What does that mean? When you are at the lowest place of your struggles and you feel like there is no way out and you feel like death is at your door, and it doesn't necessarily mean physical death, but destruction is at your door, and you hold on to what you know the truth to be, that is God hearing. What am I saying? The masculinity is the aspect or the attribute that fixes us, that orchestrates us, that guides us. The feminine brings the birth. The feminine births everything that the masculine seed plants or imparts to it, so that we can be taken care of, but more importantly, so that we can trust the universe regardless of what we are dealing with. And if we follow that through, we see all of these attributes, not only are they repeated, they are compound, and they are intertwined. And it continues, that thread of femininity, that thread continues throughout the Scriptures. And we see clearly in the scriptures when that femininity was cast down and the priests only looked at masculinity and it actually pushed to the side the feminine. And what do we see? We see a downfall. We see a nation that is now subject to occupation by people who care nothing about them, with the exception of what they can get from them. The Romans did not occupy Palestine just to be occupied it. They took tributes from Palestine. So I am saying to you that we are at a place where we can push the Romans out so that we are no longer being forced to pay tribute to an attribute that does not care anything about us. Why are we at this place? Because we are allowing, we are embracing, we are searching for, we are hungry for the Shekinah to birth a new beginning, to birth balance, harmony, peace. It's no coincidence that a male started this discussion, the seed of it, and the birth of it came through a female. It is imperative that we don't lose sight of who we are and don't lose sight of what the scriptures are saying to us. These are attributes more so than they are individual people. And I hope I know I am. Are there any thoughts about that? Was I on mute when I was talking?
No, you're fine.
Is this clear?
I believe Ron said something the other day. He talked about the different paths that these two children of Abraham took, Ishmael and Isaac. They were on different paths. And I believe, Ron, you said something about we can be on different paths, and as long as we are in search of truth, we can find it. It doesn't have to be exactly the way. Your search is not exactly my search or someone else's search. But because we have the intent and the desire to find truth, we will. Or it will apprehend us.
Yes. And that's the beauty of it. That is the absolute beauty of it. And perhaps even that is why the covenant was with Isaac, is because that's the path that religion will take. That is the broader path that most men will take. But if they're searching for truth, then they will find it. It will be there. And even in Evelyn's example, think about the part of your persona that he saw or felt, that he knew that he could come to you for comfort. That's awesome. Don't overlook that. That's awesome. He knew that he could come to you for comfort, and you became what you needed to be. That's what this is all about.
Okay.
That's what makes
So,
us hope. Sorry.
No, that's okay. We even talked about the names of Isaac's sons and what they meant, and the names of Ishmael's sons and what they meant. And I just saw something while Ishmael himself, his name means God hears. I looked back at Jacob's children, and Simeon also mean God hears. So the attributes, the threads are the same in each lineage of these children of Isaac and Ishmael. There are many attributes that are the same. There's silence. There's God's discipline in Ishmael. For Abdil means God's discipline. And we talked about some of the parallels that occurred with these two sons of Isaac as well. Well, they both have eyes in their name. I didn't see that. Ishmael and Isaac, they both received the promise of land. One was Palestine and the other one was Arabia. They both claimed descent from Abraham. They both were his sons. They both were the firstborn of their respective mothers. They both used the same name for God, El or Elohim in Hebrew and Allah in Arabic. They both were monotheistic. In other words, served one God rather than many gods. Both fathered Ishmael's line. Ishmael fathered 12 sons and one daughter. And through Isaac's line, his son Jacob fathered 12 sons and one daughter. Both have been the fathers of many nations. So again, I mean, even Abraham, he sacrificed Isaac, but was it not a sacrifice of a sort to when you banished Ishmael? To put away his son, to send his son away. So there are so many parallels here. It's just telling the story of hope and the story of faith and the story of love in different ways through different lines. But the message is the same. Both of these, Abraham, a ram was provided for his son Isaac, and the well of water was provided for his son Ishmael. God provided. And both of these, the angel of God intervened by making those provisions. Both of them nearly experienced death. Ishmael through thirst, and Isaac nearly through being sacrificed until the ram was provided. So what we're basically saying then is that all of these are the essence of some of the things that are in us. It's sort of like a road path, if you will, a roadway. And it says, okay, if you take this way, these are the kinds of things you're going to experience. And on the names of the sons are attributes, regardless of whether it's through Ishmael or Isaac. But in the end, the issue is, if you seek truth, regardless of the path you take, you will find it, and it will find you.
And Barbara.
Yes, sir.
The 12 sons of each and one daughter.
Yes.
What does that say? It does not take an equal amount of feminine energy to balance masculinity. That one daughter of each speaks to the Shekinah bringing balance to the nations that came from them. And that balance comes as a result of desire, and when that balance was disturbed or uprooted by masculinity, that's when everything fell apart. We have no choice but to embrace the reality that just as there is no life without a physical womb, there is no life without a spiritual womb. And it does not matter how many seeds there are, that spiritual womb can birth righteousness if that spiritual womb is influenced by the masculine and it submits to it and it becomes subservient to it and see itself as being inferior to it, bad things happen. And what I mean by bad things happening is the pathway for truth has been impeded, if not totally blocked. And that will continue until we recognize that the spiritual government of our Creator does not need an equal amount of masculinity for the Shekinah to be the balance to it and to make the type of provisions that allows us to see and understand what we are seeing. And when we are at an impasse, it is the Shekinah who guides us to the material we need for understanding. Everything that we have desired in regards to our teaching has always been supplied for us. And that supply, those supplies that we received came most of the time in a manner that we were not even looking for. That's what makes this powerful. The difference in our presentations, our thought patterns, the difference in how we process what's being taught, the difference in how we feel as opposed to how we felt some time ago about the spiritual journey, that's what makes us strong. The differences is what makes us strong because we embrace those different approaches and we trust that regardless of the approach and regardless of what comes out of your mouth, you know it to be true. We trust that. And if we think about it, then that means that there is a spiritual government intact. So when we began to experience harmony and peace, we will at that time begin to see even more clearly how we are to engage religion or people who are steeped in religion so that they too will have a desire to travel the journey that leads to truth. It doesn't matter. As I said a couple of weeks ago, I guess, or a week, I don't know. Once we strip away all the rituals and all the labels, every one of us is the same. We are seeking the same thing. Men rob and steal because they have been taught to do that. We were not born robbers and murderers. That came from a disaffection for our Creator and a disregard for the body that houses Elohim, giving Elohim a physical experience. It is up to us to alter the course of religion so that humanity can see itself. And all of it comes because we truly embrace the Shekinah, the feminine, respect it with everything in us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Are there any other comments or thoughts? I just have one additional one, and that is wherever we read and whatever we understood on the journeys, on the path of Abraham, we saw some imperfection. In other words, everything didn't go exactly right all the time. But what was perfect was his desire and his intent to follow the Creator. So even though we desire and we intent, and our intent is pure, there may be times when we don't quite make it. We miss the mark sometimes. But the issue is not to stay there, but to continue moving on and seeking and trying to understand the truths that are set before us. So do not let imperfection be an excuse. It doesn't have to be. You can be righteous. And when you're righteous, it doesn't matter. What works out always works out. Just like what happened with Abraham, just like what happened with Isaac when they said that their wives were their sisters. Even though God had already said to Abraham, first off, I will be your shield. I will be your shield. So just remember that as well.
Can I add something?
Certainly.
I'm reminded of something Nick put on the board some years ago. Set your intent and let it be. If you're following this,
set the direction. Set the direction
yeah.
of the intent, and just be.
Set the direction. Thank you, and just be. That still rings out to me, because if you're searching for truth, there is no such thing as imperfection or looking for it. Everything happens for the cause of what you're searching for. So when you talk about trying to be perfect, that's only a measurement if you are following religion. If you are searching for truth, you set the direction of your intent and you let it be.
Matter of fact, Ron, we have been taught by religion that we are too imperfect to be accepted by the one who created us. And the judge of the perfection are the ones who are imperfect as well, but find their perfection in the titles that they carry, as opposed to being in the kingdom principles with which they were created.
Sure.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? I don't know about you all, but I feel like I've been on a journey. Everywhere these fellows went, I went to. Man. And it reminds me, what?
Carries us with you.
It reminds me of the Israelites years hence. I mean, this was way back before they got sent to got taken into captivity. I'm sorry, they went to Egypt, and when Joseph was there, and they grew and grew and grew, and the Pharaoh wouldn't want. Pharaoh died, and another one rose up, and anyway, it reminds me of the fact that when Moses led them out of Egypt, it could have been what the story says. What I believe it was 4 days. What did the story say? I'm sorry, how many?
It could have been 40 days.
And it took 40 years. We can go around in the same circles ourselves if we allow ourselves to, or we can get off the circle and follow the lead of the Creator, and not our own. It's when we decide to do things our way, my way, which is a selfish kind of thing. That's when, wow, I'm destined to repeat lessons that I shouldn't need to repeat.
And we've been in this wilderness for 500 years, from 1520 until now. We have been in this wilderness for 500 years. And it is time for the beauty with which we have been brought into this earth to be shown to humanity, so all can become humans.
Are there any other thoughts? I think that's going to wrap it up for me for now, Pastor. I believe.
Okay.
Unless questions come up again later.
Yeah, and if you do have questions, please write them down, because you do so much in a week until it's difficult sometimes to remember them. And if the question is not important, you wouldn't have it. Every question is important. And if you think about the question that Evelyn raised in regards to her experience, look where it took us in terms of understanding. Every question is important.
Thank you.
So Ms. Barbara has wrapped up at this time this portion, and I, with the rest of us, I suppose, have no idea where the next stop is on this journey for us to receive an understanding of why we are where we are and be equipped for the next portion of the journey. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your presence. I'm grateful that our Creator has given us the opportunity to be Elohim in this earth. We don't take that lightly and shouldn't. It is imperative that we hold on to what we know the truth to be, but also respect the journey that we're on. Okay?
Okay. Well,
All right.
if there's nothing else, thanks everyone for your questions and for your thoughts and for your comments and for your attentiveness.
And you have a good night.
Have a good night, y'all.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.